Hello everyone and welcome back to a bit of a weird video today. I don't really do these type of videos normally. It's quite a personal video, and I don't like doing these type of videos because it's sort of like who cares, and I also don't want to make it sound like I'm throwing some kind of pity party where I want everyone to be like, oh, don't worry about it, you'll be fine, all that stuff. So that is not what this video is meant to be. It's just an honest discussion about kind of the mistakes I've made that I didn't realise I was making until about 4 months ago. And it's kind of got triggered by, I don't know which to say first. I don't know how to structure this video, but I suppose I'll just tell you what's just happened, right? This has happened about an hour ago. Basically, I applied for a job, and we'll get into this, like, job applications and stuff in a second, but I applied for a job. It was actually a company that you might have heard of it called IBM, and I never even thought of applying to them for some reason, but I saw a job post on LinkedIn, of all places. What a hellhole of a social media platform. But I saw a job post on there, and I decided to have a look, and I had a look at what jobs they had, and I decided to apply for one that I thought would be okay, like a kind of a web developer job, I suppose. And I thought, yeah, that'll be all right. That's probably the job I've got the most chance of getting a response from, or like an interview. So I applied for it, and they sent an automated email basically saying like, for this job, we're going to give you 2 questions to answer, basically leak code things. And then they sent through another email, which was like the actual link to, it was to HackerRank, to do a couple of questions, and you get an hour and 15 minutes to do these questions. And I'm going to be honest with you, I absolutely shat the bed. I couldn't do the first question. And this is kind of one thing I wanted to get into in this video, but I don't really do leak code. I'm not really a big fan. Like, I sort of get it. Like, I get why companies would use it, and I certainly get like why you would want to learn data structures and algorithms, and leak code can be kind of a practical way of solidifying your knowledge, I suppose. You learn the theory, and then you do the practical, and you can do leak code for the practical stuff, so I get that. But it's just not something I've ever really done. And this is kind of part of my regret, I suppose, or regrets, plural. So I've spent the past like hour or so thinking about that and being a bit like frustrated in myself that I couldn't do it. And just kind of having a bit of a realization of like, I don't know, I guess my shortcomings. And this all happened because about 4 months ago, I left a job. Probably a really stupid idea, and I think if you were, if you were looking, like in hindsight, at least I can say that it was probably a stupid idea, and actually wasn't really the solution to the problem. And if you're watching this video, you'll probably think the same thing. But I was just really burnt out, just kind of generally. I thought I was burnt out with just programming, because for some reason I had it in my head that you can only get burnt out with one thing. So like if you program for ages, then you'll get burnt out. Or in my case, you do stuff that's just really unfulfilling and boring, and then you get burnt out with programming, because why would you want to do it? Because it's boring. Programming itself's not boring, it's just the stuff I was doing was. So I thought I was burnt out with just programming, but it turns out I actually probably burnt out with just life in general. I'm not going to, like I said, I don't want to throw a pity party, but people talk about work-life balance. In my case, that doesn't really exist. I don't really have much of a life, truth be told. I mean, I'm quite introverted, so maybe that doesn't really help, but just generally speaking, yeah, I don't really have much of a life going on. And then also I didn't like work either, because it was really boring, so not great that the only thing I had in the work-life balance was also shit. But yeah, I was really bored, and it was just having quite an effect on me. Really unfulfilled as well, and all that stuff. So I decided to resign, and then 4 months ago was the end of my resignation period. And so my hopes were, and by the way, I should give you some context, that I've been working as a developer now for 9 years. This isn't like a new thing. It's not like I've been working for a year and I'm bored of what I'm doing. I've been working for 9 years as a web developer, doing mostly just CRUD applications, so like create, read, update, delete. So you basically add endpoints to kind of manage a resource, so like perform those actions on a resource, create, read, update, delete. And then you also add the front end to allow the user to interact with that resource, and that's about it. That's kind of all you do, and it's really boring, and once you've done it once, it's quite easy to keep doing it. Like, it's not a challenging thing. So yeah, that's what I've been doing, and to be honest with you, pretty much after my first job, so I worked at I need to give some background here. So I started working when I was 17 as a web developer because I was looking for an apprenticeship. So I managed to get an apprenticeship at a web design agency, and I spent 2 years there, which is where, to be honest with you, most of what I know now is what I learned there. Like, I'm not even exaggerating there. Like, most of what I can do in terms of web development stuff, like, obviously I've learned more stuff, but the lion's share of like what I can actually do is from there, and then I've done a little bit of kind of bits and bats after that where I've learned more stuff. But yeah, most of it came from that job. So that was it was a very stressful job, and I got a lot of anxiety from it, but I did learn a lot. And then after that has basically just been kind of cruising through my career, which is obviously, for somebody that's fairly ambitious, like I would consider myself fairly ambitious, and also wanting to get into technical stuff, cruising through a career, not really doing much, especially not technical stuff, really, is a bit, you can imagine the effect that has, and it's a bit shit. So I sort of cruised through my career and didn't really do much. And that's kind of, honestly, that's my story. I never went to university and did computer science or anything like that, so I don't have a CS background, which I kind of, it's not that I don't know if I regret it, because I didn't really have the option anyway. Like, I called up, I basically failed a lot of exams and stuff in school, so I don't really have any grades, so I couldn't really get into university, truth be told, because I never finished my apprenticeship either. I went into like an actual job. I left it early because it was just, honestly, the stuff I was doing in my apprenticeship was like how to use Microsoft Word and stuff like that. And I'm at work like writing PHP code and stuff, and then at kind of college, or not college as in university, but like kind of a level below university. I'm doing like how to use Microsoft Word and IT in business and all that stuff, and it's like, God, this is so boring. So I ended up leaving there and getting a proper job as effectively a junior developer. Even though I was actually technically, for a period of time, I was the most experienced person on the team, which was really weird. But anyway, let's not get into that. But yeah, I did that for 9 years, and I basically stagnated after 2, and have kind of just cruised my way to like higher paying jobs. Compared to like a big tech company, I never really earn that much money. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, very unfulfilling, very boring, and I decided to leave the job. And that's kind of where the problem started, and where I realised the mistakes I've made. And I wanted to kind of go over them in this video, to hopefully make it so that you don't make the same mistakes. So let me try and put it into an order that makes sense. First of all, the title of the video is most likely going to be something like, I've been working as a developer for 9 years and I can't get a job, which is true. And I must have sent about 40 job applications now, and I've got, out of all those 40, and some of them are at big tech companies, so I kind of didn't really expect to get a response. It's just I was kind of wishful thinking, I was applying for jobs that I wanted to get. I never got a response from any of the big tech companies like Google or anything like that, which is kind of, I sort of expected that. But even jobs that I should have been a shoo-in for, like jobs that were like PHP jobs and stuff, haven't got anything back from them either. So that's when it gets a little bit worrying. And I'm going to be honest with you at the moment, my anxiety is through the roof. Just kind of generally, because I'm not getting any responses back from jobs where actually I should have been. Like, there was one job that I applied for about a month ago, and it was a job where honestly every single thing on the job like description, I could do it. Like, it matched, everything matched, and I got a response, I think yesterday, saying that they'd found better candidates. So, like, if I was a betting man, I would have put all my money on me getting that job, and I didn't get it. So, yeah, that's not gone too well. And, yeah, I mentioned the IBM thing. That's kind of another eye-opener. I never really knew about data structures and algorithms. In fact, I spent most of my career thinking that if I worked at, let's say I worked at a company working on like websites, like a back-end developer or something like that, that would be the same as working at Google as a back-end developer. obviously, I now know that that's not the case, and I kind of assumed that the pay was always the same. So, like, if you worked at like the companies I've worked for, which are quite low-paying companies, and you know, like relative to Google or something like that, I always assumed that the stuff you do would be the same, and also the pay would be the same. Like, I thought if I worked at one company or I worked at Google, it didn't really matter because I'd earn the same money. I only found out maybe 3 years ago or something like that, when I saw a video of someone who had just left university. This is in America, by the way. They'd just left university and they'd got a job at Google, and they were going through their job offer from Google. And basically their signing up bonus was my yearly salary. So literally they'd come out of university, they'd done no work, and they'd got my salary as a signing on bonus to work at Google. And I think at that point I realised, oh, actually, maybe there are differences in salaries. But yeah, I didn't really do anything about it, to be honest with you. I should have, in hindsight, like started grinding data structure and algorithms and leak codes and stuff like that. But to be honest, I didn't really know about those things or the significance of them until maybe a little bit after that. Actually, I learned about like what data structure and algorithms were and like the importance of them. I'd never heard of them before. And to be honest with you, only about maybe 6 months ago, oh, actually probably longer than that now, but basically 9 years into my career is when I actually started learning data structures and algorithms. Like I read a book. I'm currently working on a course at the moment on boot.dev. Shout out to them. For data structures and algorithms in Python, because it's kind of a practical thing, which is good. I like practical stuff. I've read a book, but it's not very practical, so the information didn't really get retained, so I'm hoping that this works a little bit better. But yeah, I'm learning that stuff now, but I never knew about it. And obviously, it's such a massive part of interviewing and also just working at those companies, like being able to kind of determine how fast your code runs is like a fairly important thing. And also just generally as a developer, it's important to know that stuff. So yeah, didn't really didn't look into any of that stuff. Just didn't know. Like, it's one of those things where you don't know what you don't know, and that was one of those things where I didn't know. I didn't know they existed. So I didn't know the importance of them. I didn't know that it was something that you had to learn. So yeah, that's probably one of the regrets, but it's a bit of a weird regret because it's not really like something that maybe my regret is more like not Googling how to get a job at Google or something like that. I should have probably done that. But yeah, I don't know. So I don't know if you can consider it a regret because I didn't really know any better. But anyway, but yeah, I didn't know. So I didn't know about them. I didn't know about LeetCode really. I'd heard of LeetCode, but I just never really understood what it was about. I never really got the importance of it, and I was always like, jobs that make you do whiteboard interviews and stuff like that, or coding interviews, it's just dumb. And I don't really know what my opinion is on that now. I don't know if it's dumb, and it's like if you, I don't know. I don't really know. Maybe that's a topic for a different video. But still, I can't do them anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I think I'm going to start doing more LeetCode stuff, and maybe I'll do some videos on it or whatever. But yeah, we'll see what happens with that. But the big thing for me, I think my biggest regret, and it kind of comes down to the burnout stuff, because I mentioned that, I spent a lot of time procrastinating. Like, I spent a lot of time watching YouTube and not really doing what I was meant to do, or not working on projects and stuff. And it affected me mentally, just generally, but also like as a developer, it affected me just kind of not really doing the things I wanted to do. And a big thing for me was always like, I think it comes from that belief of believing that working at one company, like the companies I've worked for, and working at Google or Meta or something like that is like the same thing. So for me, I was always like, I want to work at like, I want to make as much money as I can, so which means I need to move up positions. Not like not like different companies, but just different positions. Like, I need to become a senior developer, and then I can earn like the most money I can or whatever. Obviously that's not really how it works, but I didn't know that. So I was like, I just need to learn as much as I can and become really competent. So what I would do, instead of like working on stuff I wanted to work on, I would basically prioritize just learning web development stuff. So I'd like learn, Node.js and React. There was a long period of time where I thought that those were like the hip things, and that if you wanted to work on something fun and like modern websites and stuff like that, you would have to use Node.js and React. Now that's obviously not the case, and it's mental. As somebody that's a bit more experienced now, looking back at that, it's so dumb. But the thing is, I just didn't know any better, so I can't really like hold it against myself. I just wish that I'd maybe have spent a bit more time googling stuff and like trying to figure out what was going on. But yeah, because of that, I basically spent ages just doing things that I didn't want to do effectively, working on projects in Node.js and React and stuff like that. And when I say like working on things I didn't want to work on, or as opposed to, you know, like what are the things that I did want to work on? Well, it kind of varied throughout my career, but I worked on some graphics stuff, so I wanted to create like either a game or maybe a game engine using like OpenGL and C and stuff like that, so that would have been pretty cool. I wanted to get into low-level programming and create my own operating system. That would have been pretty cool. And what else have I done? I think I've just generally wanted to look into other languages. You know, I tried learning Rust at one point. I've tried learning C++. I've tried learning a bit of assembly, C as I mentioned. Just generally like trying to be more technical, trying to expose myself to more stuff. But then I don't do that because I'm an idiot. And instead what I do is I just think, well, this stuff's a waste of time, right? Learning low-level stuff, like trying to create operating systems and stuff. Big waste of time, because I'm a web developer, and I need to get better at that so that I can have a better career. You know, maybe I can look at this stuff, creating operating systems and stuff like that, at a later date, you know, when I've accomplished my career goals or whatever. That was so dumb, and I wish I'd have known better at the time. But the reality is, and this is one of the things that I really want people to take away from this video and not make the same mistakes I made, is in terms of web development, building an operating system is probably not going to help you for that specific thing. But in terms of being a developer generally, building an operating system is going to make you a hell of a lot better of a developer. And it's probably going to open up more opportunities as well because you know different things, right? Knowing how computers work and stuff. You might, like I saw a job recently where it was an Apple job. Sorry about that. I just sighed right into the mic. It was a job at Apple. Might still be open, so one of you can go for it if you've got the skills. But it's a job as a kernel engineer working on Core OS, which is like Apple's their operating system runs on Core OS, as far as I'm aware. Like all of their devices will use the same kind of the same kernel, I guess. So if I'd have done low-level stuff, I might have had an opportunity to work on that stuff. But it's not really just about career stuff. It's also just, first of all, just being a better developer generally because you're exposing yourself to different things, different ways of doing things. You know, obviously, when you're doing low-level stuff, you have to be more considerate of performance and stuff. And learning C is really good because I've been doing some C as well. Boot.dev, again. They've got a course in memory management in C, which is really cool. So I've been doing that, and that's been really... It's really helped to kind of understand how memory works in computers and also how memory is interpreted. So, like, it's all ones and zeros, but then how you interpret that, like, you can have, I don't know, a byte that's interpreted differently, whether you say that this is a character or an integer or whatever. So, like, stuff like that is stuff that I neglected for so long, but actually knowing that just... It's weird because it feels like it just doesn't apply. Like if you're a web developer, that's just not going to be a thing that you care about unless you're doing like back-end development in Go. That's probably going to be the only time you care, or Rust or something like that. But if you're using like a dynamically typed language, then you're not really going to care. But the reality is, it just gives you more confidence. I've been doing that stuff and I feel more. Well, I don't feel confident now because I failed that IBM test, but I was feeling more confident because I did the stuff in C and I've been learning stuff, and I just feel like a better developer because of it. And I think it's one of those things where you don't necessarily always realize how things translate. Like doing that stuff, you know, if I'd have really like committed to that operating system stuff, I think I would have been a better developer, but I can't really explain why. just that exposure to maybe more difficult things makes everything else seem easier. Learning different ways of doing things and writing code and laying out code and all that stuff. I think it just would have made me a better developer. But also, and this is more in relation to the burnout stuff I was talking about, I would have been doing something that I wanted to do rather than something I was kind of forcing myself to do because I thought, I need to do this to get a better career or whatever. It would have been nice to just work on stuff that I wanted to work on, and it's funny really because now I'm in a position now where I've kind of realized all this stuff, and I want to work on all this stuff like the operating system stuff, or like I'm looking into creating my own programming language at the moment using the Crafting Interpreters book. Really good, by the way. It's a free book. I think I'm going to do a video on it at some point, but yeah, really good. That's something that I want to do, and it's a shame, really, because now I'm in a position where I can't really work on what I want to do because I don't have a job, so I need to get a job. I need to get some sort of income anyway. So it's kind of funny how that works, where like when I had a job and I could have just worked on whatever I wanted in my spare time, I didn't. And now I'm in a position where I don't have a job. Now I want to work on stuff because I realise the benefit of working on, stuff that seems like it's of no like benefit to maybe web development. I mean, I don't want to be a web developer, I don't think, but I just don't really know how I can go into any other kind of career because that's all I've done. Like I say, I saw that Apple job and I thought like, that would be really cool. I'd love to do that. I'd love to work on like Core OS as a kernel engineer or whatever, but I just don't. That's just not really anything I've done. And I wish that at some point I had a thought about it because I think for me, I've only ever seen myself as being a web developer. And that there's no other opportunities because obviously I started as a web developer, so it's kind of like I'm stuck now. I'm stuck as a web developer doing PHP, and that's it. But the reality is, you can change, and I wish I'd have known that sooner. I wish I'd have realised that sooner and made the effort to kind of start looking into other stuff. But yeah, I didn't. Unfortunately, I didn't, and now I'm in this position where I can't seem to get anything. So. Yeah, hopefully that helps. I think that's everything I really wanted to cover. It was really just about, first of all, what's going on with me and the job stuff. But also, the big thing, which obviously I've just talked about, is really working on stuff that you want to work on. And you never know, that could shape your career. Like, it could be that you work on stuff you want to work on. If, let's say, you were working as a web developer like I was, and then you started working on operating system stuff. Maybe you become somebody that works operating systems, right? I didn't even know those kind of jobs were out there, to be honest with you. I just assumed everything operating system related was like open source, but it isn't. So, I don't know, just look into it, I guess, and make the most of it, right? Make the most of the time you've got. Obviously, I'm saying this is like the position I'm in. I don't really have time to be just kind of working on anything. I kind of am still doing that, and I'm kind of hoping to get more YouTube videos up and maybe do something with this channel. But, yeah. That's about it, really. Yeah, just work on what you want to work on and try and make a career out of that. Don't make the same mistakes I did. Even if you want to work as a web developer, if you ever get this feeling where it's like, I want to work on something else that's not web development related, just do it. Just work on it, enjoy it. Do weekend projects, do all that stuff, and I think you'll come out the other end a better developer. Learn your data structures and algorithms, which is what I'm doing, and I don't know, maybe just do some leak code every now and again just to keep your problem solving, up to scratch, I guess. But I don't know about leak code, but I'm still probably going to end up doing leak code myself to kind of make it so that if I ever get one of these IBM problems again, I can do it. But yeah, that's about it. Hopefully enjoyed. Let me know if you want to know anything else, like maybe more about my career and stuff like that. But yeah, like I said, I don't really do these kind of videos, so it's a bit of a weird one. But if you enjoyed it, let me know. I can do more personal stuff. It's quite therapeutic, right? It's very cathartic to kind of get this stuff off my chest and put it out there. And if you've got any like advice for me that you want to give me, I wouldn't turn it down. It'd be very welcome. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.